This channel is made possible through the support of generous listeners just like you. If you would like to be a part of helping us bring our message of hope, peace, love, and spiritual truth to the world, please consider heading to experienceofthesoul.com/support, where you can join us as an ongoing patron or simply make a one-time gift. Blessings on the journey, dear friend.
CCU Orlando, Natural Awakenings Magazine, and Unity of Nashville present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 71, our interview with Dr. Michelle Robin. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice and I am the host. And I'm here in 818 Studios with my incredible producer.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey. I'm always excited when we have friends and guests in the studio.
I know, and today is one of those days. Wow, my friend, Dr. Michelle Robin, I have known for, I was thinking it's probably been at least 20 years.
Well, I'd say 24.
24 years. And I'm so happy she can be in the studio today. You're going to hear a little bit about her story, the great work she's doing, and what an amazing practice you have in Kansas City. And that's, of course, where we met. But I think we actually first met in a Unity church, didn't we?
Unity Church of Overland Park.
Yep, Unity Church of Overland Park, and I'm still in contact with some of the people there. So we welcome our listeners to the show as always, and our goal today, of course, is to have spiritual conversations, authentic spiritual conversations, because this is the authentic spiritual journey, not the planned and the perfect and the overly spiritual spiritual journey, because we believe that we are here to reawaken consciousness to love, acceptance, and peace. And with that, our work is to be authentic. And we know as we honor our human experience that the spirituality that we practice comes forth and acts as a bridge for us in healing on every level. And so anyway, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored. I'm glad you reached out.
Yes, and I can't believe you flew in just for us. I didn't find that out till earlier, because I knew you had family nearby. So that means even more that you flew in just for us. I want to fly in just for somebody. I want to come to Kansas City now and be with you in your practice again, because as you know, not only did I know you as a friend and as a fellow church member, I was also a patient at your practice.
Well, I like to use the word client because you know what the word patient means.
Oh, what?
One who suffers.
Oh.
And so we've really shifted that word, and people call it members or whatever. I just kind of a consumer client because it's a little bit less offensive. I like to see people who aren't suffering.
Yes. Well, and that's what we're doing. We're here to heal, right? And so when you hear me say, from your perspective, well, let me back up. So we often talk about what is it like when we watch a movie from our perspective. Dave's a producer and musician. I'm a minister and a musician. So when you hear the statement, we are here to reawaken consciousness to love, acceptance, and peace, how do you hear that through your lens of wellness, of teaching as a doctor? What do you hear?
Well, for me, I think of the word, to me, what well-being means in the first place.
Yes.
And I think it's hard to really dial into your well-being when you have a gut ache or a heart ache, or you're disconnected from source, whatever that is for you, or you have a headache or you have anxiety. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's really, we've got to dial in our well-being so that we can be our authentic self.
Yes.
And there's a lot of noise around on so many levels, mechanically, chemically, energetically, psychospiritually. So for me, what it means is how could I really diminish the noise?
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. Years ago, I heard of this idea of a sound environment, and I had not been consciously aware of how much our environment, not only with sound, but like you say now, this was pre-cell phones that I learned that. So now with the constant people being constantly plugged in, 2 and 3 devices at a time, as well as diets that are not reflective of the attitude and the consciousness of wellness, really are impacting our culture in a negative way.
Well, in so many ways, and that's one reason why we do podcasts, because we're hopefully helping to, in a sense, counterbalance some of that noise. You know, here's a funny story, and I'm really not a great music person, Alice. I'm not sure if you know that, Dave. I'm sorry. I know you're a musician, but it took me a long time to realize why, and I just had this awakening in the last year. Why? I have three and technically older brothers. One's 21 minutes older. But when I was growing up, the music in our house was like AC/DC and Pink Floyd, and I don't remember all the other names. And so to me, that vibration was discerning to my soul.
Yes.
And so that's what I learned music to be. And so if you actually grabbed my little running iPod 10 years ago when they first came out, it had like 8 songs on it. And so if you grabbed it now, I maybe have 30, just so you know, not a ton more. But it really got clear to me on, oh wow, well that's because the vibration was so different from what I needed at that time, because I grew up in chaos.
Yes.
And so anyhow, I think there's so much truth to what you're saying, and I have a podcast too, which we're going to talk here later on. Small changes, big shifts.
Right.
For me, the whole message is small changes, big shifts. How do you put the odds in your favor?
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about on the show.
Yes, it is. And I love that. I can't believe I hadn't mentioned it yet. I was so focused on your practice. But and you've had some amazing guests on there. And the thing I continue to see about your work and the work of the guests you have on the show is reawakening, to the true self. And then, of course, wellness does come because we often lately, I've been referencing that old Unity song, "I'm alive, alert, awake, enthusiastic."
Oh, yeah.
Right. So we're reawakening to that authentic self, and so that means we make changes, right? That means we and the changes I think can be overwhelming when, in fact, like you're saying, it's the small changes that we do over an extended period that really make the tremendous, big shifts in our lives. So I want you to talk a little bit more about that.
Well, gosh, there's so much to unpack there. My mind is racing with about 5,000 things I could share with you there. And going back to some of the songs and reawakening, people say to me all the time, I love that you as a chiropractor, a lot of people don't even know I'm a chiropractor. I'm not sure what they think I do, by the way. And part of it is I don't do a very good job telling the story about that, but I am a chiropractor. And people say, oh, you're a new agey chiropractor. No, I'm an old agey chiropractor.
Right.
Because the truth is, when we came out, September 18th in 1895, it was really that the body was sick because of 3 reasons only: traumas, thoughts, and toxins. And we had to remove the interference.
Yes.
And unfortunately, in the 70s, we decided we wanted to play the game of insurance. Right. And so for us to be in the insurance world, we had to become more allopathic or more mechanistic versus vitalistic.
Right.
And so we became more that back pain doctor. And, this never really resonated with me. And so over the years, just through the teachings in my own journey, I have said, you know what, I know for me that I've got to remove the interferences.
Yes.
And dial into the truth of who I am. And I can't dial into the truth of who I am if I'm not hydrated, if I'm not putting the right fuel in my body, if I'm not listening to the right things, if I'm not getting movement, if I'm not getting sleep. And we have this amazing owner's manual, and it's not that hard.
Yeah, exactly. Just a few practices. Well, one of the things about your practice that so stood out is when I was living in Seattle, right before I moved to Kansas City and met you, I had a healing crisis. So I guess it's for my show, maybe not yours. But I had this tremendous physical healing crisis. And I didn't realize it until very recently, in the last couple of years, how big of a turning point that was for me spiritually. And I was eating the wrong things. I was doing the wrong things. And I didn't realize that everything I was putting in my body I was basically allergic to. And so my system got so overreactive that anytime I tried to eat, I felt, sick. And I went to a number of doctors, all allopathic doctors. And of course, everyone was a different diagnosis, and 2 wanted to do surgery, even though they weren't sure. And so I had been fairly heavy. And then through all this, I had lost a tremendous amount of weight because I really couldn't take in nutrients. I didn't realize that was what was happening, but I really wasn't absorbing nutrients. Well, I got so desperate. I lived in Seattle. I opened the phone. That was when we had phone books. I opened the phone book and I did kind of a drop the finger test under naturopathic medicine. well, it happened to be I was living in the greatest city in the world, practically, to find naturopathic medicine. And the woman I found taught at Bastyr University, which is where, that's one of the main schools in the country for naturopathic medicine. And that changed my life. Because it was, she took one look at me and said, okay, show me what's in your lunch bag. And I showed her, and she said, you can't eat any of that. Throw it away. And I was like, wait, what? And it was just a real moment of awakening for me. And what was interesting is right after that is when I found the Unity teachings. But had I not had that physical issue, because what was happening is as my body was really, I was dying ultimately, and my doctor said I was dying, and I got everything from an immune deficiency to gallbladder disease to Hashimoto's. They were just all these ideas, and I was like wasting away. But what I realized in the midst of all that even though my body was dying, something was like coming alive at the same time. And so my soul was really waking up to, I am not my body. I have a body, but I am not my body, because something else is starting to wake up and drive my care now of my body. And so it was a huge turning point in my journey. So then when I moved to Kansas City, I actually moved there for ministerial school. Yours was the first practice I went to, and I was like, oh, thank God. I mean, it was like a breath of fresh air, because Kansas City is not known necessarily for its progressive healthcare, but your center is, your Wellness Connection is. And that has always really impressed me because of the diverse offerings that you offer, and then the also the way you work with energy in your practice as well.
Yes, and what's so fun is I just came from a breakfast meeting or with Junior Achievement Hall of Famers, and and two of the guys, they were CEOs of companies that were retired. One was of a hospital system, and another one was from I believe an engineering company, an accounting firm. And he said to me, did you go into this business because the market and well-being is just so hot right now? I looked at him, I said, Dave, no, I've been around this space for 28 years. Well, I've been in my own practice almost 28 years. Yeah. I've been around this space for 38 years. And I said, no, I'm just trying to survive. Right. And when you, first of all, thank you so much. I love your wellness connection. Even think about the words is how do we reconnect to our own well-being? Because as you and I both know, we are designed to be well. We are innately designed to be well. And as you look at that, what's that reconnection look like? And for you, like you said, the sickness, as you started to maybe hit that bottom as part of your journey, is that your soul said, okay, now here's what you're really here to do, and here's your calling. And so much like you're called to do the work you're doing around ministerial and prosperity and community, I'm called to help people realize that they're designed to be well. And your body's like a business. If you want a great ROI, you've got to invest in different areas.
Yes, absolutely true. And on the spiritual journey, and I have run into this a lot in New Thought circles, excuse me, where people are very typically, they want to spiritualize everything. And so I run into this fact that people don't want to look at what's really happening in their body, which is really an unhealthy form of denial. And so part of my work with people one-on-one, and even the work on the show, is to really wake people up to the fact that if there's something going on physically, there is, yes, a spiritual and emotional component, but sometimes things need to be addressed physically. If you need an adjustment, you need an adjustment, right? I don't think everything is going to be prayed away. I mean, I think prayer is our foundation, and we do the prayer work, and yes, prayer is healing, yes, prayer is creative, and yes, but we have to do all of those things to really have a journey that works, I think.
Well, you think about interference. Okay, so, not this is what happens. People think that chiropractors fix pinched nerves. People have irritated nerves and systems that are in flux. That you have too much or not enough energy, kind of like a cell phone that has 2 bars versus 4 bars. And you can't fix that subluxation through prayer. Could you Could you help shift it? Yes. But could you completely fix it? No. And you know what's interesting, Alice, about what you're talking about is I believe that I've had more of a physical healing because of my spiritual journey.
How interesting.
Which is interesting now as I've thought about it, but really haven't put it in those words. You know, I started my practice really because I love the spirituality. So I lay hands on people, and I want to tell you, I love being a chiropractor, but what I love the connection, because people in my life, through my journey, just the right person came along, and then the next person came along, and then the next person came along, and how do you not know there's something greater going on when there's a young person that was, I call it at opportunity, some people call it at risk, and I was one of those kids, and people came in my life, whether it was the nun. I don't know if you know, I was not raised in the church. I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I wasn't raised in any church, so which is kind of a blessing because I have no dogma. Right, so my first stepfather taught in a Catholic church, taught in a Catholic school. So I went to Catholic church, and one of my first mentors I can remember as a young girl, probably 4, 5, 6 years old, was a nun.
Oh.
And for whatever reason, she befriended me and loved me. And I think that people around you, and for our listeners here today that are suffering, just open your eyes and look for around the people that are cradling you. And I don't know about you, I can look back now as I'm in my 50s and go, okay, I can see the magic there, and I see the magic there, and I see the magic there. And it so happens to be that a chiropractor came in my life at age 15 and started pouring into me at another level. And I thought that's what chiropractic was. You know, and I really don't remember much about the chiropractic experience of the adjustment, even though the adjustment is far more powerful than people realize. If they knew what the science was showing in New Zealand right now, you would have all your kids at a chiropractor and yourself to treat your anxiety, because we know that having a clear nervous system downregulates anxiety. And with today, so we were talking about some of the stuff happening in the world before we went live about some anxiety. So for me, it's opposite of you. I actually had a spiritual awakening, not knowing it, and became a chiropractor.
That's so funny.
And then one day, I had to say, you know what? I need to really figure out why chiropractic works. And oddly enough, it was about 10 years into my practice.
Wow. I didn't know that, but that is so interesting. Well, and I've been really working on this. As I said right before we went live, that there's something really important about me acknowledging that physical, it was really a physical healing crisis as the way my soul needed to wake up. And you know, my teaching about the soul and even about the body, if we're dealing with something physical, is, you know, all healings are healing of the soul. And I didn't even really know, I wasn't consciously aware, like I say, until recently, about how instrumental that moment was and making new choices. And again, that's your teaching about small changes, big shifts. Put the odds in your favor. Those are very quotable quotes because they're grounded in truth. And that has been the number one thing that's made difference in my life, in everything, in eating, in exercise, in my life as a musician, in my ministry. Whatever it is that I do every day is the thing that's, you know, and it's in small increments, really in the long term creates a big shift in who I am. In the, I like to think of it as the vibrational feeling tone of my life. Like, I've been through a shift like within the last 6 months, and it's like there are new people in my life. There's new energy in my life. There's a few that have left my life, and all that is because of the new choices I'm making. So I know you do work a lot with people in that as well.
Yeah, well, rhythm builds resilience.
Yes.
And I think we're looking for more resilience as a community, as families, as individuals. That's what I'm looking for. And I also, I believe in every single cell in my body, if you don't heal the heart, you will never, ever do the things you need to do to heal your body. And so how can we really get rid of the dissonance, whether it's an energetical dissonance, whether it's a psychospiritual, whether it's a chemical dissonance. So, you know, for my case, to be totally transparent, my gut's going, what's going on today? And my niece is living with me, and she picked up dinner, and I'm like, did I tell her to make sure that was ordered gluten-free?
Yes.
You know, and so that's that awareness. And it's not necessarily a judgment, it's an awareness going, okay, there's a little dissonance, and what can I do about that? So whether our listeners are experiencing some type of dissonance, dial in and really tune into the wisdom of the body, mind, and spirit.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's so important that we remember that we do have all of our own wisdom, and that so much in our culture right now is read this, do this. And I love when people read the books I've written. I love when I can support people, but I don't want people to substitute that for their own work. And so it's so important to me that the work that I do inspire people to do their own work, their own soul work, their own listening, their own tapping into their intuition and following that inner guidance. So I think when we come back right after the break, I want to talk a little bit more about that because I believe you're a master at that. And I teach it a lot about dialing into your own guidance, how you know what's yours to do, and then moving forward because so often we don't want to take action. We know it's ours to do, but we fear the action steps. So I think that would be a good point to break, and we will be back with Dr. Michelle Robin right after this.
We'll return to the program in just a few minutes, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, CCU Orlando, who has helped make this episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey possible. CCU Orlando is a welcoming community dedicated to transforming lives, celebrating diversity, and supporting soul growth. CCU Orlando is located at 771 Holden Avenue in Orlando, Florida, with Sunday services at 9 and 11 a.m. You can stream services live online as well as learn more at christchurchunity.net. We'd also like to thank Natural Awakenings Magazine of Central Florida, Greater Orlando. Each month, Natural Awakenings magazines across the country take a practical look at the latest natural approaches to nutrition, fitness, creative expression, personal growth, and sustainable living. Natural Awakenings magazine is a free publication and is available in selected stores, health and education centers, healing centers, public libraries, and wherever free publications are located. You could learn more, including advertising opportunities for your business, by heading over to nacfl.com. And finally, we'd like to extend our special thanks to Unity of Nashville, a sister ministry of CCU Orlando. If you're searching for a like-minded church community and a personal connection that supports your heart and mind in the Central Tennessee area, then join Unity of Nashville at 10 a.m. every Sunday morning at 5125 Franklin Pike. For more information, head over to unityofnashville.org. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey with your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Welcome back. We're glad to have you with us again. And it's always a pleasure to have friends in the studio. And today's no exception. A longtime friend, Dr. Michelle Robin, and we reconnected again recently. I'm so glad we did. And by the way, Dave is still in the studio
Oh, yeah,
today.
I'm here. I'm just, anytime there's a doctor in the house,
Dave.
Yeah.
We all got better posture right now.
I know we're all sitting up
Well,
straight.
I had just come from a really pretty bad back injury that I had last March, and then about a year later in June, it kind of re-aggravated a little bit, and so I did the whole MRI thing, and hey, we're gonna try physical therapy, which was great, but if this doesn't get better, then we're talking surgery and steroid shots and all that stuff. So yeah, this is hitting very close to home as far as taking care of yourself and making sure that you're paying attention to what's going on. And we've talked about it in the show, the book that I read by Dr. Sarno, which was Healing Back Pain through like thought process and everything. And so I don't know how you feel about that, or if you're familiar with that book.
Sure, I've got that couple copies on my desk. I mean, on my bookshelf at home, and as you mentioned in the first part of the show, is it's a piece of it.
It is.
It's a piece of it, but it's not the whole story.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
The book kind of implied that you could just kind of like will your back to stop hurting, and if it didn't, then and when I started doing that, I was thinking, my back isn't really feeling great. Am I doing it wrong? Am I not spiritual enough?
Exactly.
It gets a little weird.
Who wants to go?
I'll
Both of us want to handle that.
I'll take it, Coach. Pass me the ball. So it's interesting. I get the chance to see some really, really fun people, and it's interesting how the universe just brings you just new family members. And I actually was with clients yesterday, and I've got this new person. They've been there maybe a couple weeks, and here I am, like I've known them 5,000 years, and encouraging them. Some people may call it bitching at them, but I call it encouraging them. And I tell them, if I'm not encouraging you, you need to fire me.
Exactly.
Because I quit caring.
Yeah.
And so it's our responsibility as caregivers to truly help people wake up to their own magnificence. And when we give up on people, shame on us, because it's such a gift when somebody says, you know what, I'm bringing you in my own vulnerability, this weakness in this situation I'm in right now, and then how can you guide me? So when I look at that, Dave, my undergrad's in accounting, so I'm going to use my hands here because in business you have marketing, operations, finance, and leadership, and I think in the body you have marketing, I said it backwards. You got marketing, let me do mine normally. Scratch that. Operations, marketing, finance, leadership. The body, you got mechanical, chemical, energetical, psycho-spiritual. And so when I lay my hands on it, I always start with the mechanical aspect. So tell me about how you're sleeping. Are you sleeping on your stomach? Are you sitting all day? And then we'll go into chemistry, the biggie. Are you hydrating? Yeah. Because we all know the difference between a grape and a raisin, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's hydration, right?
Hydration, exactly.
And so it's amazing how many people don't hydrate, and then we'll start talking about some of the energetical stuff. Are you around people that you don't necessarily not like, but that you're not causing you to grow? And then of course the psycho-spiritual. And I have a woman that's going through some stuff, and we talk about are you going through any anger or resentment right now? And I have a Louise Hay book in my office, and I pull it out sometimes. And one of my friends, clients, recently lost their daughter to a shooting, and she's got back pain. Of course you're going to. Of course. Because you're angry.
Of course.
You're angry at the situation, and doesn't mean you don't need adjustment, but you also need to start to honor that and awareness. So that would be how I tackle it, Dave. I can't help but look at it from that whole picture view, because that's who I am.
Right.
Exactly. There's another book too I read that was pretty instrumental as well, called Your Body Speaks Your Mind by Deb Shapiro, talking about psychoneuroimmunology. But I think what is so important in our work, it's so interesting how we meet in the middle. One of the things, from knowing you in the past and watching you over the years, as we can do through social media, even though that's definitely only a portion of what anybody sees about anybody, but I've always been really struck, impressed by, the depth of your spiritual work. So I was glad you talked about it. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show. And I've seen you in your practice. I've seen you interact with clients. I've seen you and experienced you interact with me. I've heard stories of good friends who've been to you for years about how you use your intuition with your patients. In terms of really listening to the inner voice, even being guided to a certain spot in working with people. But I know you use it in your everyday life too. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that, how you work with that, because I talk about it all the time. So I want to hear from your perspective.
So being transparent again, I believe that I'm just now really owning the gift. And I've been doing this for a long time. For years, I'm a whole brain person. And so for years, I thought it was the magic of the technique, and it was the magic of something else. So I would go to class and I'd go learn this technique or that technique or this modality. And people would come back to me, and I would be like, why are they coming back to me? Because that doctor I sent them to is actually clinically better. And what I'm realizing is just energetically for me is I'm just can dial in. I can dial into the pain. I've had my pain. I've had my journey. Yes. And so when somebody comes in with different things, I can kind of read it. I just got a funny text this week, actually, from one of my clients. It's been 8 years. And she said, when I came to see you, I was 29 years old. Here, the facts may not be 100% accurate, but pretty accurate. 29 years old. I was on 30 pills a day for Crohn's disease. Yeah. And I was angry. I was, 80 pounds overweight, and my life truly was, stunk. Okay. And so she texts me. She's getting married in 2 weeks, and she's now 37. And by the way, and was in the hospital all the time. She said, "I just want you to know I've not been to the hospital in 3 years. I'm taking no medication. Right. And I really haven't even seen you in a year." Yeah. And I'm living my dream. I'm marrying my life partner that I found because I healed myself. Yeah. But she also did the work. In the first day she came in for back pain and wanted me to do something magical. And here's the deal: is pain is a long time coming, and it's not going to go away overnight. Right. And how do we help people really dial into that? So it was so fun to watch her. And now she's a nurse. Her dream was to be a nurse. Wow. But she also did the Hoffman process. Yes. Because I just try to to tell people the truth for me, and I know what helped me heal. Part of it is the teachings of Unity Principle, and that's part of the journey and part of the story. And it's also just this whole well-being lifestyle. So for our listeners, and it can be overwhelming. And I believe that's probably why people are in a state of confusion, is because, well, do I do keto? Do I do paleo? Do I go to this chiropractor or that chiropractor?
Right.
You go to whoever feels right. When my clients move, I'll say to them, why don't you go sit in the office? Don't even make an appointment. Just go in the office and sit, see how they acknowledge you, feel the vibe. And you mentioned energy. We have crystals on all the walls of our office. And our good friend Mary Omwake blessed the office when we built Your Wellness Connection. And so very intentional about the energy there.
Yes. And it's obvious. You feel it. Actually, you feel it the way you feel it at our church when you get in the parking lot. Before you even go in, you feel it. Yeah, it's in the land. It's in the property where you are.
Well, I would say it's funny. I don't necessarily. I start to feel it, but I just met with a guy. We're redoing our parking lot. All the hats you wear as an entrepreneur and a leader.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he goes, I felt better just walking into this place. And this was yesterday morning. And so you're exactly right. And how do we create, for our listeners, how do we create that in our home, in our car, in our relationships, in our social media? So.
No, I think those are all really good points, and we've been working on a lot of that recently. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago we were talking about the healing power of salt, actually in your home, and I really encouraged our community, because I had done it with my son, who's now 12. You haven't seen him yet, but he's such a big boy now, and I'm so proud of him. But we did this practice together where we used a couple different kinds of Himalayan sea salt. One was a real fine salt, and one was a real coarse salt. And we just, I put mine in a special little bowl that happened to say gratitude. That was a gift from one of our board members, so it had a special meaning. And then we added to the salt bowl a little rosemary sprig from our herb garden, and then another little flower to make it beautiful. And then he made one, he found a little jar that was an old jelly jar, and he wanted his by his bed. He said, I think, Mama, it's going to help me from having bad dreams. And so it was a wonderful activity, and it was to, again, kind of keep us woken up spiritually. And the intention, and we did it together, it took 5 minutes. I mean, it didn't take any time. And then when we refresh it, that's going to bring back that energy again. So I love giving people really easy, but with a lot of things they can do with a lot of intention to make a difference in the energy. And you can even use a little salt in the corners of your homes and really lift the energy. And of course, we're in Florida. I said, of course, you could just go to the beach, too, but not everybody lives by the beach. So we love that as a practice to just kind of wake us up, to clearing out this negativity, because we all, one of the things I talk about often is how we love to talk about the law of attraction, and how when we hold something, that's positive, then positive comes to us. But what is also true, those pieces that are unconscious are also a magnet. And that's why I talk so much about healing, mind, body, soul, so that what we're attracting, if we're doing our healing work, then we attract energy where we are. That's the same vibrational match. So we talk a lot about that yes, those positive things we put out are attractors, but so are the unhealed pieces. That's why we want to heal, and consciously heal mind, body, spirit, or mind, body, soul.
Yes, and just because so in my case, shift happens to me.
Yes.
I had a bike accident. I had ransomware. I had my office flooded. And that's all in the last, 4 years.
And that's life.
And that's life. And
yes.
so you can't get caught up thinking that when shift happens, what am I doing wrong?
Oh, yes.
It's just clearing out another level of something or whatever's it's just part of living.
Yes. Oh, it is. And as a matter of fact, Dave, this was the other title I meant to give you. And I'm going to talk about it right now, and then we're going to do a whole nother show on this. So the old-time metaphysicians, which who I love, they had this thing called second force. All right.
Second forest?
Force, F-O-R-C-E.
Okay.
And second force is when you are really moving forward on the journey, when you're moving into a brand new consciousness and something like this happens. Or all of a sudden there are more bills than you know how to pay. Emotionally, you're at max. Financially, you're max for whatever reason. So, but second force happens. the old word for it is chemicalization, but the better word, I think, is second force, because it's like the universe saying, are you sure, doctor, you're ready for your practice to move into the next level, right? Because you're always moving, you're always growing, you're always expanding. I know you. So this energy comes in, the second force, and it's like, okay. So it's not a test from the universe necessarily. It's your soul working with universal energy to work out your next steps. And so how you go through those changes is what really matters. But I say to people all the time, life happens. You can't keep life from happening. Yes, there are certain things you can call into your life. Absolutely. We're powerful co-creators. But we all have life on life's terms. How do you explain the other things happening in the world today? Nobody asks for these traumas, these catastrophes that are happening. So we have to learn how to deal with those. So instead of saying, oh, I did this wrong, or how did I draw this to me? We say, wow, life is happening. How do I work with this? And then how we guide ourselves through that, that's the journey. Not when we look spiritual.
Second force.
Yeah, that's a whole topic.
Oh, I got you.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking about my own journey and walking through.
Yeah.
I'm literally, we are, 60 days out. And if you can imagine having ransomware, walking into your practice on a Monday morning holiday week, and you're locked out of your server, and you have 120, 30 people coming in that day, and you have no idea who they are. And so I would say that it's interesting I'm going through another second force. I'm going to call it about the 15th force, by the way. It's not second. But I'm really clear, and I was clear at the end of it. So if you talk about July 2019, I'm not sure what you're referencing to, because I didn't have a July of 2019, because I was doing everything I could to recover from a ransom attack in my practice. But I'm grateful for the gift. Ransomware, so it's where they basically lock you out of your server. And you got to pay money. Anyhow, that's a whole nother story, and that's a whole nother show. But what it did is I got really clear that for every minute that I am not doing what I'm called to do, which is sit with people, or I don't sit a lot. I mean, we're sitting here today, but this is not my normal, is to be with people and ministering them. My work for me is my calling, and it's a ministry of well-being. Yeah. Every minute that I'm not doing that, I'm wasting the talent God gave me.
Yes.
And so that's what I realized. And so it's like, how do I start to move off my plate, being an IT person, being a real estate owner, and all those things. So I love the second force. And so that's my nugget from today's show.
Cool. Well, and I think, it requires a lot of faith to move through that. It's like it tests our understanding of God, our understanding of ourselves. How big can we be? How much can we expand? How much can we say, okay, I'm expanding into this because this is hard. And on the spiritual level, I can't explain it. I can't even tell somebody how to do it, but I know how to acknowledge when it's happening. And it takes each soul digging in, man, and just going, okay, so I'm going to handle this, and then I'm going to handle that, and then I'm going to handle that. And I'm never losing sight of my purpose. I'm never losing sight. So it's going to run through whatever I do like a golden thread. I mean, you described it perfectly, but here it is. So, and it makes us choose, right? It makes us choose, what are we going to do? Where do we want to be? Where do we want our energy to be headed? So, I mean, that's a beautiful example.
And how are we going to show up on a moment by moment basis? So,
yes.
Like I said, I told you earlier, I was not raised in church, and my partner was raised in church. So that's the Wednesday, Sunday people, and there's some different energy around all that. Where for me, it used to be that Sunday to Sunday you had this experience, whatever you wanted to call it, whether it's an awakening, a connection, and then there was that maybe it was a daily. You had something maybe through your devotion or your daily word, and then all of a sudden it's moment to moment. And you're dialed in enough to go, okay, I hear you, I see you, I feel you.
Yes.
And I realize that this is this moment in time. And Alice, I don't know about you, but the last 50 years have gone really fast.
I 100% agree with that.
And for me, I'm a big quote nerd. Big with quote nerd, because it's how I feed that committee in my mind, because otherwise I'm a fear-based personality by all the ways I was raised and just some of my own stuff. And so I'm like, okay, I've got to be feeding it this good stuff over here. And I remember seeing a quote, and I can remember what practice I was in. So for me, I've had 3 locations, and it was my very first location. So I know that was between 92 and 95. And I saw on a church of all places, at Bolton, when worry shows up, faith doesn't. When worry shows up, faith doesn't. And so when I am worried about stuff, that's what I try to dig into, and I really anchor into my faith.
Yes, absolutely.
And how do I live that? And so it's hard. Some days it's hard. I'm going to tell you, I was tired in July.
I bet.
You know what? I missed a couple vacations, and I missed my friends. But what I do know is that I was able to show up. And you mentioned showing up when I first came here, and I have some golden rules in life. Number 1, show up. And so when a friend reaches out to you and says, hey, would you come down here? By the way, and you pay for it yourself, and show up. And by the way, come a day early so that we could do a podcast. I'm like, I'm in. So show up for me. And I think that's what our Spirit's asking us to do. Show up for it. Right?
Exactly.
And then be a go-giver. And how could you, I always, another quote that goes to my mind is, you can't outgive God.
There you go.
And so, and
that's a great Edwin Gaines quote.
Yeah, and then celebrate each other, and really have one-on-ones. And so, when you walked out to greet me today, it's like time has stood still. The last, how long have you been in Florida? 15 years, 14?
Yeah, 12. Yeah,
12 years. It's like we've talked a few times in 12 years, but it's like I just saw you yesterday.
I know,
and the soul knows
exactly.
The soul knows
exactly. So. Well, and I thank you, because when I was just in ministerial school, I remember you brought me into your practice to do a session with your staff, and that was so special to me. Then I always remember it because. I was just getting started, and I was doing a lot of workshops then, and I was really, and I still do, but I was really wanting to affect people on every level, and not just people in pews, but people in businesses, people in offices, people that, have real jobs that would never maybe come in my church doors. And that's exactly what the podcast is now. So you having faith in me back then was important. Yeah, that was important on the journey. So thank you for that.
Well, when you're dialed in, you feel it. I get a chance to mentor a lot of young people. I've got many, many kids, none biological, and you feel it.
Yes.
And you're a special one. And we're all special in our own rights. And some of us are special in that moment where we'll be raising phenomenal kids, and they're going to come out and into the world and do different things. And I knew the moment I met you that there was magic that's going to happen in your life. And so it's been such a gift to share this journey with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want you to talk a little bit about your show. We've mentioned it a couple times, and it's a very quotable title, Small Changes, Big Shifts. So just tell us a little bit about that and where to find it. And Dave will put it in the show notes for sure, so that when people look at our show notes, they'll be able to just click and go and know more about your shows. So tell us a little bit about how to find it.
Really easy, iTunes, Small Changes, Big Shifts. You can hit it in, I call it Dr. Google, or put it right in Google, and Small Changes, Big Shifts, and it'll pop right up. We're in our, 5th or 6th, 7th season. I don't even know. I have trouble keeping track sometimes. But it's just so much fun getting to share little tips. And from our listeners today, if there's just one thing, we've covered a lot of stuff today, but think about the one thing, because that's what has saved me all the years. Once again, that quote, when worry shows up, faith doesn't. I have used that a gabillion times the last 27 years or so, and it has helped me during the dark times.
Yes. I'm glad you mentioned that again, too, because I was going to say, what's the one thing you want to leave with our listeners? And you did it, right? Anything else you want to make sure and tell everybody about the work you're doing, or encouragement to them? Anything else? Because that was wonderful.
I would say honor yourself. I listened to some podcasts, and I heard a podcast recently, people were talking about purpose.
Yes.
And I think some people were, what's my purpose?
Yeah, yeah.
And your purpose could be just to hold space for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I don't want that to sound arrogant. I want it to sound, be your best version of you. Dial in, and it doesn't have to be, I want to tell you, I'm shy. I'm an introvert. I would just as soon be at home right now in my pajamas, hanging out with my girls, doing my thing, as being out here. But I also feel called to the work, because if not me, who?
Exactly.
And so to have our listeners dial into what feeds you, you'll know if you can get rid of some of the noise, if you get rid of the headaches and the belly aches and the confusion, you'll know.
Yes. I think that's so important too. I would just echo that and really encourage you because so often when we talk about purpose, people often think it has to be a life-changing event. And the fact is, you being your authentic self is a gift to the world, and it's going to show up differently in me than it does in Dr. Robin, than it does in Dave. But we're all about our purpose, and we all connect at that soul level. So really trust yourself, honor yourself. I think that's so important, friends. And we do thank you for joining us as always. And I know you'll join me in thanking Dr. Robin for being with us at her own personal expense and coming into town. And speaking at CCU Orlando as well.
I love it.
So bless you. Again, thank you. And as always, friends, I want to encourage you to let your friends know about the show. Please share it because we do have listeners, again, all over the world, over 35 countries now, 30,000 downloads. We are really excited about moving forward. And thanks to all of you who ordered T-shirts and were a part of that campaign. We're really excited about Experience of the Soul podcast channel. And next year, we've got some other things planned. So we're really excited for all the work that we're doing and your support of it. So we thank you. We bless you on the journey, dear friend. We'll see you next week.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey presented by CCU Orlando, Natural Awakenings Magazine, and Unity of Nashville. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is also made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons Dove Borland, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, J.J. Hamilton, Arlene Meyer, Kathy and Terry, Marcia Mott, Nora Miles, Diana Cox, Leslie Williams, and Susanna Garcia. If you would like to support the channel as a patron on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. And if you enjoy this podcast, help spread the word by sharing it with your friends and leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, or the platform of your choice. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2019 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.